today we have Brian, and he's down in Texas, Houston, Texas, and his method of training is based on the Marinovich method, right?
Right. Yes, sir.
Right. So it's very, very different than, the mainstream training, and but we share a lot of synergies and common areas. Like we both care a lot about the foot and ankle, right?
Right.
And please tell me a little bit about how did you start this coaching uh, method, and why did you choose this rather than just lift heavy, following the mainstream method?
Right. Right. So, a lot of people don't know I was actually a regular coach. So I was doing a lot of these methods. I trained through college and professional ball and high school in these same methods. I just, never, it was a couple of things that kind of always stood out in my head. And, I was a good college player, but I had a friend that um, used to just hit the crap out of the baseball. And it always like enthralled me, like how is he generating that much power?
Well, was he big, or was he
He was skinny,
he was skinny, right?
skinny and long. And
Right.
he's about 6'2", 6'3", and I'm about 5'11" and a half, close to 6 feet. And I was stockier. I did play catcher, but I was big on the weights. I was the strongest guy on my team. I
Right.
squatted over 500 pounds, benched over 300 pounds. All the standards everybody looks at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it wasn't converting. And it's not like I wasn't a good hitter. I was a good hitter. I
Right.
was one of the top hitters in the conference, but it wasn't converting into home runs. But I'd have these little spurts where I'd hit the crap out of a ball. And I'm just like, why can't I do that consistently? Right. Uh, and he was playing in the weight room. I mean, 20s, 25s.
Right.
He's never trying to get too big or anything. He was super fast, super twitchy, and I mean, could absolutely murder a baseball. And I started to like look at that as my baseball career kind of ended, and it didn't make sense to me, from what people were telling me. And so, when I went into teaching, I went into coaching and teaching, and we were running the off-season programs, and I just started seeing these athletes kind of come through, and you know, especially on the middle school level. I know that's people don't look at that, but I looked at it for what it was. Like I see a kid that was super dominant as a seventh grader, and then he'd work super hard in the weight room and do all the things the coaches tell him. Then he comes back the next year, and it's like he lost a step, or he wasn't very agile, or he starts getting these injuries all of a sudden.
Right.
And I start seeing it year after year after year, start seeing these consistencies. And so probably back in about say I taught for 13 years. So probably into my fourth year, I was coaching like select baseball, and that got too overwhelming, and with coaching at the school too. And I went full time. I just basically went full time into myself, and I started working on my own wellness, which I got to get back into. Uh, and a couple of people would come up and like, man, you ought to train us, or blah blah blah. And it kind of went from like wellness, and then went into like some kids wanted to train, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'll just throw this throwing clinic, right? And so I didn't know at the time, but I learned from one of the best throwing guys in the country, a guy named Ron Wolford, and he was doing a plyometric throwing program that is basically duplicated all over America, all over the world now. And I was actually in the beginning of that. I was in college, kind of interning with him and working for him. So I was going to like kind of do the same thing that these guys have figured out now. They were using fast twitch, pliable drills to improve speed and max effort. Uh, with every single rep was all about max effort. They'd radar you, and they let you go until you start to depreciate, and they cut you. And I just thought it was so cool, and it helped me a lot that I tore my shoulder. I fell on it and tore my labrum. So fast forward, I'm like, okay, I'm going to run a system like this. And I had a quarterback, and he did really well. His dad was kind of a power guy, and he was like, well, I'm going to bring you a bunch of clients, man, because you're really good at this. And so he brings all these football guys. Of course, they weren't quarterbacks. So I had been following the Marinoviches, and I saw the Troy Polamalu thing, and I'd known about him since middle school because of Todd Marinovich. And I was like, man, I need something else. So I just started looking at this stuff on the internet, what I could find. And I start ordering stuff from another place that was kind of that these guys who worked under them for a while. And man, I just went in there for like 4 weeks and we started doing barefoot training, barefoot jumping, getting on the foot apparatuses. I didn't know crap. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I really didn't know anything. But the guys got way better and they didn't lift any weights or anything like that. And like to the point where people were like, of the other coaches were like, were you working with him? Were you working with him? And I was like, yeah. Yeah, it's like, man, these guys look like a level better than at
Uh,
that time. I was like,
this
I got something.
this population is really what is their background? Are they a majority African American or are they white or mixed?
At this school, mostly white,
Mostly white. Okay.
but this group of people was a mixed group. So it was probably 3 black kids, 3 or 4 white kids.
Okay,
So it was pretty
mixed.
mixed. It was about 10 of them, and it was pretty mixed.
But all of them were improving.
All of them improved. Yeah,
Right.
all of them improved. And so I kind of I one was a really good athlete. He's at a D1 school now. The quarterback was actually he was a white kid, and he ended up going to getting a full scholarship to Texas A&M, and he transferred when Sumlin got fired. But those kids actually ended up being really good ball players later on. But
Mm.
it just started to kind of show me that like weightlifting and the standard way wasn't the only way. I
Right.
didn't know what I was getting into at the time. You know, I still like doing a lot. I was still doing traditional stuff. I was getting them in the sand pits and running them through sand and pulling sleds and doing a lot of band stuff and things of that sort, which I don't do any of that now. But it at the time with I felt like the biggest common denominator with their success was the barefoot train.
Mm.
Like them actually getting their shoes off and touching the ground. I didn't know about, all the neurological receptors in the foot. I didn't know about the nervous system. I didn't know any of this stuff. But
Mm.
I knew something was going on with these guys, getting barefooted and training. And then it kept washing into like basketball season. These basketball kids start coming up. And I had one kid in the month gain like 7 inches on his vertical and he started dunking in the games and stuff like that all of a sudden. And I was like, yeah, this is different. Something's up. So I went out and I contacted Marv, and I didn't know at the time he had Alzheimer's. So he was kind of going back and forth with me. And finally, he introduced me to Gary Marinovich. And, I want to make this plain and clear too. There's other guys out there that are trying to kind of replicate the training or saying that they understand the training. If you haven't worked in-house with these guys, you don't know what you're doing.